excited as this week's video is sponsored by Cricut. Now, if you don't know, Cricut make a range of smart cutting machines, and a few months ago I created a video using my Cricut Maker 3 to show you how to make 3 basic cake toppers. Now, in that video, so many of you asked for more Cricut videos, so this week I'm showing you how you can make this really fun shaker style cake topper. So whether you've already got your own Cricut machine and you're looking for projects to make, or maybe you're thinking about buying a Cricut machine, in this video I'm going to be showing you just how easy it is to create your own cake topper. Okay, let's get started. So in order to make my cake topper, I'm going to be using my Cricut Maker 3. So this is one of Cricut's cutting machines. Now the Cricut Maker 3, if you are thinking of getting one, cuts over 300 different materials. So it's great for so many different projects. Now I'm going to switch on my machine, and I do have it connected to my computer via Bluetooth. Now when you're creating your cake topper, you can design the whole thing at once, cut out all the pieces and put it together, but I'm going to break it down into stages just to make it a little bit easier to follow along. So the first thing that I'm going to create is the main part. So it's going to be the shaker part that's going to sit at the back. Now to do this, the things that I'm going to use is, first of all, I've got some of the Cricut Deluxe paper. Now this is such a fun pack, and we have unicorns, we have stars, and we have these really pretty patterns. Now, one thing that I love about these packs is if we have a look at the back of the paper, we have these really pretty pastel shades that really complement the designs that we have on the front. So for this topper, I'm actually going to be using the star design and this really fun polka dot pattern. Now we're also going to need some clear acetate. So I just have a pack of the Cricut translucent acetate, and by using this we can create a little window to see those sprinkles. Now, as well as that deluxe paper, to make my cake topper a little bit stronger, I'm going to be using some kraft board on the back just to give it some stability. So in this pack we just have 3 different shades, and this is just a really thick card. I've then got my Cricut standard grip mat, and this is just going to allow me to pop that card, paper or acetate into my Cricut machine to cut it out. Now, what shaker cake topper would be complete without some glitter or sequins? Or if you are creating a cake topper, you could also use some sprinkles. I've then got some plastic cake pop sticks, or you can use bamboo skewers, and I can attach these to my cake topper to push it into my cake. I've then got some glue, some tape and some sticky pads to pop my cake topper together. So now we have all the materials. I'm going to jump on my computer into the Cricut Design Space to get started. So I've loaded up a new project in my Cricut Design Space. Now if you are new to using Cricut and you haven't seen my previous video, you can add shapes and images, text, you can upload your own images, you can also open up projects that have already been created and modify them to create exactly what you want. Now, taking inspiration from those stars on that paper that we're going to use, I'm going to make the main part of my cake topper a star. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just go into this shapes panel, and as you can see, you've got shapes that come free with your Cricut Design Space. You also have shapes that you can see are included with a subscription. Now this is the Cricut Access subscription, which I myself have. Now I really love the Cricut Access subscription, as this gives you access to so many images and projects that you can use without having to design them yourself. So I'm going to start just up here with this star. So I'm going to click on that, and this will load it into my design space. Now we can move it around and resize it. We can rotate it. I'm going to be designing my cake topper for a 6-inch cake. So I'm actually going to make my star 5.5 inches wide. Now, in order to create the main part of our shaker, I'm going to need 4 separate parts. So the first piece is this star here, which I'm going to cut out of that white card. So I'm going to change that to white. I'm then going to duplicate this so that we have one exactly the same size. So I'm going to cut this out of that star paper and stick this onto the background. Now, in order to tell Cricut that I'm going to be cutting this out of a different material, I'm just going to change that to purple. So these 2 pieces are going to be on the back. So the next thing I need is a frame to go around the edge. So I'm going to start by duplicating my star. I can then come up here to this offset option. So all this is going to allow me to do is create a border. So you can see we have this one on the outside, or I can bring that in so that it comes inside. We also have the option to keep the edges rounded or to keep those sharp. Now I want to create a border that's going to fit over the background. So I actually want it to be on the inside. Now I'm going to offset this by minus 0.25 inches, which is around 5 millimeters. If I click apply, you can see that we have a smaller star in the center. Now, in order to make this a border, I'm going to select both of those stars, and you can either right click and come down to slice, or come down to this bottom option and click slice. Now, as you can see, we have the star with the border. We also have the original star that I'm going to delete, and also the piece that it cut out. So I'm going to delete that. Now, I also want to tell Cricut that I'm going to be cutting this out of a separate piece of paper. So I'm going to come up here to the color panel and just change that to yellow. Now, next to this, you can see that we've got operations. For some different options, I'm going to keep basic cut selected, but you've also got the option to create wavy lines, perforations. You can actually use the Cricut machine to draw using pens, foil, score, deboss, engrave. You've got the option to print and then cut. So this is great if you want to bring in your own images. Okay, so I've got my first 3 parts. Now the final part I'm going to need is a star to cut out my acetate. Now I want this to be slightly smaller than the original star, just so it will fit behind this border. So first of all, I'm going to duplicate the first star. I'm going to come up to offset, and I just want to bring that in slightly and click apply. I can then delete that star on the background, so I know that this one is slightly smaller. So we have our first 4 stars. The first one I'm going to cut out onto the craft card. I've then got the purple star that we're going to cut out on the star paper. I've got this border that I'm going to cut out on the polka dot paper, and this black star for the acetate. I'm going to come up to the top here and click make it. Next option that's going to come up is how you want to load all of your materials into your machine for your project. Now for this first part, I'm going to be sticking them all onto my mat and loading this into the machine. But Cricut also has really cool smart materials, so you can load these directly into the machine and you don't need a mat on the back. I'm going to be using my 12" by 12" mat, but with the Cricut machine you do also have the option of using a 12" by 24" mat if you are creating larger projects. So as you can see down this left hand side, we have our 4 different stars that we want to cut out. So the first one is going to be on that craft card. So I'm going to start by removing the plastic film from my mat. I've then got my piece of thick craft card. Come down to the corner and click continue. The design space is then going to give me all of these options of materials. So if we come down, you can see the amount of options that you have. So you have different kinds of cards and chipboards. We have loads of different cardstock, including glitter cardstock and craft cardstock. You have so many different options for fabrics, different felts, foam, foil or metal. You've got the option of iron-on, so you can create t-shirts. Maybe if you want to add logos onto aprons, for example. You then have leather and different paper options. So there is endless amount of projects you can create with the Cricut Maker 3. So I'm going to come up and just find the craft board. Then going to tell us that we need to load in the fine point blade. Now this is the blade that comes automatically with the Cricut Maker 3, so I can go ahead and load in my mat. Once the Cricut machine is happy with the material that you've added in, we can press go. On the screen, the design space tells us that our shape has been cut out, so I can unload the machine. I can then peel that off, and then we have the first part of our cake topper. Now on the screen you can see that it's moved down to shape number 2. So this was the black star and this was actually the acetate. So I've got my sheet of clear acetate, and on both sides you actually have a protective film. So I'm going to take off my top layer and then pop this face down so we still have the protective layer on the front. I can then pop this into my machine and repeat that process of cutting out my shape. But this time when I click the materials, I'm going to go down and find acetate in the list. Once that's done, I can then peel that off of my mat, and there I have my acetate star. Now, just like the first two, I'm going to go ahead and cut out my star and my star border on my deluxe paper. Now, this piece is a little bit more delicate, as is the border, so I'm just going in with my small spatula, just lifting that off from my mat. That is going to give us our 4 separate pieces. So the first thing that I want to do is just stick my star background onto that slightly thicker piece of card. To do this, I'm just using some craft glue. Next, I want to stick my piece of acetate to my border. So this still has that protective film on one side, so I'm going to peel that off. I'm going to add on some double-sided tape. I can then remove the back of my tape, and I'm going to stick down that acrylic so we just have this little window. So we've got our 2 pieces, and we want our sprinkles or our sequins to sit inside. Now we need to create a border around the edge to keep those sequins in, but so it's high enough that when we shape our cake topper, those sequins are going to move. Now, one option is you could use double-sided foam tape. So here I've just got some strips, and this has a height of around 1.7 millimeters. So you can lay that on and create a border. You just want to make sure that you don't leave any gaps so that those sequins can escape. Now, another option that I wanted to show you in order to create a raised border is actually using your Cricut Maker 3 and cutting wood. So I've just got this pack here, and this is Basswood, and it's got a height which is similar to the double-sided tape, but it's just going to make it super easy to create a border around the edge. Now, I'm so excited to show you this option because as well as making borders to go inside your shaker toppers, you could also use this method to create wooden cake toppers. Now, for the option of cutting wood, I am going to be using a strong grip mat rather than my standard one. So this is the purple Cricut mat, and also the knife blade. So this just allows you to cut materials that are slightly thicker than the paper, the card, or the vinyl. Now I'm going to jump back onto the Cricut design space to create the border that I'm going to cut out of wood. Now I've got the 4 stars that I've cut out. The first star, I'm actually going to change this to a guide, as I'll be using this later. I no longer actually need the second or the third one, but I'm going to keep the star that we cut out the acetate, as this was slightly smaller than the original. And they're going to do exactly the same as we did before and just create an offset. So I've got minus 1.25, so I know this is going to sit behind that border. I can then select those 2 stars, I can then slice those apart, so I'm left with a border. Now if I go make it, and this is going to go on a mat, you'll see that we actually only have that 1 star, as the second one I turned into a guide, so Cricut knows that I don't want to cut this. In materials, I'm then going to go down and select Basswood. And the piece that I have is 1.6 millimeters thick, but you can see that you do have other options. So as you can see, it's asking us to change our blade. We've also been asked to move those star wheels all the way to the right. Attach the wood onto the strong grip mat and also use a bit of masking tape on all 4 sides. I can then load that into my machine and press go. Now it's going to cut out that border on the piece of wood. It does take a little bit longer than if you were cutting out paper or card, for example, but you will see on the screen how long it's going to take. Now, because it's such a delicate star design, I actually stopped it before it got to 100% when I could see that wooden star just slightly lifting from my mat. Now I'm going to be using this inside my shaker topper, but you can see that this would also be great for creating toppers to go onto your cake. Okay, so I've got the back and the front of my star, and we've got that border. Now I'm going to start just by gluing this down with a little bit of craft glue. And this is just going to give you a raised area for your sprinkles to sit in. So I'm using this wooden border, but again, as I mentioned, you can use foam pads. And then adding on a little bit more craft glue. And I've got my front piece, which I'm going to lay on the top. So as you can see, we've got those sprinkles inside and we've got the start of our shaker cake topper. I'm now going to work on a banner and a name to go across the front. So for the name, I'm going to be using some holographic vinyl, and you're also going to need a little bit of transfer tape. I've got a sheet of pink glitter, and this one is from the Cricut glitter cardstock pack. I'm going to be using the other side of the patterned paper stock. So those three I'm going to be using for the name and for a banner to go on the front. First of all, I've got the other side of one of the deluxe paper sheets. So this is just a purple side. And for the detail, I'm going to be using this purpley sticker cardstock. Now, this one is actually one of the smart paper products, which means that we don't actually have to add this one onto a mat. So back in my design space, I now no longer need that border, and I'm left with this guide. So I'm going to use this so that I know that my banner and my letters are the right size. For my banner, you can bring in images of your own, but I'm going to click on images and I'm going to type in banner. Now, as you can see, the Cricut Design Space has all of these banners already loaded in that you can use. And as I'm part of the Cricut Access subscription, I'm able to just click on them and add them all in. This is the one that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to highlight that and add to canvas. Now I'm going to resize this so it's 6 inches in width. As you can see with this design, we've got separate parts of the shape. So I want to create a border that's going to sit behind so I can add this on top. So again, I'm going to go to offset and just enlarge that by around 0.07, which is around 2 millimeters. So as you can see, instead of the border being on the inside, it's now on the outside. I then want to add a name onto my design. So I'm going to come down to text. Now to change the font, I'm going to come up to the top and I'm going to select Cricut fonts and I'm going to search for one called Double Whipped. Now I'm just going to enlarge it slightly while I work on it, but if you can see the border around the outside of each letter, this is actually where Cricut is going to cut. So we want it to be one complete shape. So first of all, I'm going to right click on it and ungroup those letters. So I'm just going to bring that S a little closer to the O so it will cut out together. I'm then going to select all of those letters and re-weld them together. So this is going to make one shape. Now I do go into a lot more detail with working with letters and text in my first Cricut video. So I will leave a link to this in the description below. So I'm just going to bring that onto my banner, just increasing the size until I'm happy. Now for this one, because I wanted to use the vinyl, the glitter, and the cardstock, I want to add 2 borders around the edge. So this is going to give me all of the pieces that I want to add onto my star. Now I want to cut these out on separate materials, so I'm just going to color these so I know which is which. I can then come over to the corner and just select Make It. Now for this one, because I will be using some of the Cricut Smart material and some of the materials that are going on a mat, I'm going to select multiple ways. So as you can see, just like when we did the star, we've got them listed down the side. So the first one is going to be the back of my banner. So this is going to be going on that purple paper. Now coming back over to my Cricut machine, I want to make sure that I take out the knife blade and replace this back with the fine point blade. I can then load that into my machine and allow the Cricut to cut it out. So this is going to give me the first part of my banner. Now I want to do the next part of my banner, so I'm coming down to number 4 and just clicking on that. And we want this one to be selected without the mat. So I've got the back of my banner, so I'm going to carefully stick that in place. Now you can stick this down with some craft glue. I'm going to use some of those foam pads, as this way it will sit slightly higher, giving a 3D effect. I've then got the two borders for the name, the first one in the pink deluxe paper, and the second one I'm going to be cutting out of that pink glitter card. And lastly, I'm using a piece of the permanent holographic vinyl. Now you can get vinyl in permanent and removable. Now to make this a little bit easier to use, I can see on screen that the piece of vinyl needs to be around 2 by 4 inches. I'm just going to trim that down before sticking it onto my mat. I can then start by removing the excess, and then I'm going to use my weeding tool, stick it out those pieces between my letters. I've then got a small amount of my transfer tape, so I'm going to start to peel this back. So all this transfer tape is going to allow you to do is just line that up on the top, so I can stick that onto my glitter backing. And then stick that onto the second background, just using some glue or some tape. We can then bring back in our topper, and we want to position this on the top. So again, just using some sticky pads to raise that off slightly. And the last thing I want to do is just add a stick so that we can add it to our cake. So I'm going to take a small bit of double-sided tape. So here we have the finished shaker style cake topper with these fun sequins on the inside. Now before I go, I wanted to show you another example of a cake topper using the wood that we used to create the border. I really love this material and it is so great for creating cake toppers. So for this one, I just simply cut out a number 1 and I've attached it to a bamboo skewer. So I just wanted to show you another example of a really fun cake topper that you can create using the Cricut Maker 3. Now I want to say a massive thank you to Cricut for sponsoring this video. I really hope you've enjoyed the video and you'll find it useful, whether you've already got your own Cricut cutting machine or whether you're thinking about buying one. Now I will put a link to all the tools that I've used throughout today's video in the description below, and please do let me know in the comments if you want to see more Cricut content on the channel. So until next time, bye!